There she was, Karen, in her leopard print robe and UGG boots, standing on my porch, screaming that her Tesla was now possessed by Satan because her dashboard lit up like a Vegas casino. And I just stood there, coffee in hand, wondering if now was the time to tell her the truth. She'd been mooching off my electricity for weeks, and I finally gave her something extra to chew on. And no, this isn't a movie. This is what happens when a Karen-backed fake HOA plays militia in the wrong neighborhood. Freeze frame, yep. That's me. The guy whose private well HOA Karen tapped into to illegally water her garden. What did I do? I flushed her system with sewage. And oh buddy, that was just the beginning. Now before you think I'm some sort of mad scientist turned suburban vigilante, let me clarify. I moved into this neighborhood for peace and quiet. 1-acre lot, modern house, decent HOA rules. On paper, it all looked reasonable. I'm an electrical engineer. Quiet, low maintenance, not the kind of guy who starts neighborhood wars. But as I quickly learned, it only takes one power-hungry Karen in an HOA vest with a fake badge to turn a chill life into an absurd sitcom. Karen, whose real name is Candace, but who insists on being called Madam Vice President of the Neighborhood Improvement Council, took an interest in me the moment I moved in. And not in a good way. On day one, she left a typed letter, yes, typed, on my front door explaining that my temporary construction tools were a visual nuisance and that any visible storage of ladders, wires, or electrical units would result in a fine. Keep in mind, I had lived there less than 6 hours. I hadn't even finished unloading my truck. At first, I brushed it off. Some people need control like plants need sunlight. But I underestimated how far she was willing to go. She wasn't just annoying. She was strategic. Passive-aggressive with the precision of a cruise missile. One day, she flagged my mailbox as non-standard height, even though it matched 3 others on the block. Another day, she cited me for leaving trash cans visible, despite the fact that they were still being wheeled back in from the curb. The final straw wasn't any of that though. No, it was when my power bill suddenly jumped by over $180 in 1 month. I thought maybe I'd left something running. Did a systems check. Everything was in order. Then I noticed something weird on my Ring camera footage. My outdoor outlet cover was slightly ajar. At first, I assumed wind. Or a neighbor's dog. Then I saw it, at 11:47 p.m., a sleek white Tesla backing into my driveway. A cable trailing from my outlet to her car like it was a public EV station. And out stepped Karen, in full ninja mode, bathrobe flapping and phone light guiding her way. I paused the video 3 times to be sure. And there it was. That smug little tuck of hair behind the ear, as she strutted back to her house with the gait of someone who'd done this before. She wasn't even subtle. The next night, same thing. Again the night after that. Sometimes during the day. She even had the audacity to park diagonally across my driveway one afternoon with the cord visibly stretched like a charging umbilical cord. No apology. No heads up. Just full entitlement. So, like any rational person, I did what any tech-savvy, petty revenge enthusiast would do. I monitored it. I installed a power monitor with Wi-Fi logging. Over 2 weeks, her Tesla siphoned nearly 70 kilowatt-hours from my outlet. That's about $174 of electricity. When I finally confronted her, nicely, mind you, she blinked like I'd just asked her to donate a kidney. "Oh, I thought that was a shared community outlet," she said. "It's in the front yard, after all." When I pointed out that it was clearly attached to my house, wired into my panel, and locked behind a weather-sealed cover, she flipped the switch. "Well, you don't even drive an EV, so what are you using it for?" I stared at her, trying to process the absurdity. I told her to stop. I zip-tied the cover. 2 days later, she clipped the tie. I changed the lock. Next day, the entire outlet box had a new scratch on it and the lock looked tampered with. She was getting bold. And worse? She filed a complaint against me with the HOA for tampering with neighborhood utilities. Imagine my reaction when I received a warning letter and a $200 fine for obstruction of shared electrical resource. I laughed. Then I stopped laughing. Then I spent 2 days reading the HOA charter, page by page, like it was the Dead Sea Scrolls. Turns out there's a vague clause about exterior elements visible from the road may be subject to HOA easement interpretation. Vague enough for Karen to weaponize it. My front outlet, installed before I moved in, was suddenly a communal access point. That was the moment. That precise instant when I realized I wasn't just dealing with an annoying neighbor. I was dealing with a small-town dictator with a taste for free power and a complete disregard for boundaries. That's when the real plan started brewing. But I didn't want to just unplug her. No. That's too easy. Too quick. I wanted her to understand. To feel the consequences of plugging into someone else's life without asking. So I got to work. I took apart an old irrigation controller box, one of those fake green ones people use to hide sprinkler wires. I rigged it to look like a boring electrical setup. Inside? A custom-built, low-voltage shock relay circuit. Totally non-lethal, but enough to trip the sensors in her Tesla and cause a very unpleasant, very confusing 5 minutes of flickering lights, random warning chimes, and a dashboard light show that would make a rave jealous. It wasn't meant to harm. It was designed to scare and educate. I installed it, camouflaged it perfectly, synced it to my motion camera. Then I waited. And oh, when it happened, it was better than I imagined. She backed in like always, cable in hand, plugged it in, walked off without a care in the world. 5 minutes in, the show began. First, the headlights blinked twice. Then the dash lit up red. The touchscreen flickered like an old VHS tape. The car's speakers let out a confused ding 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 that sounded like it was losing its mind. Karen ran out in full panic mode, pulling the cord like it was on fire. That's the moment she came stomping to my porch, screaming about demonic possession, furious, panicking, accusing me of installing voodoo tech to sabotage her vehicle. And all I did was sip my coffee and nod. But the best part? That wasn't the only thing I'd wired. Because while she was losing her mind over her Tesla having a meltdown, the irrigation system she accidentally hooked to my private well, that one was about to kick on in 3-2. Sewage. Pressurized. Directly into her decorative garden planters. Oh, you thought this story peaked at electroshock therapy for entitled Teslas? No, my friend. This is just getting warmed up. Let me tell you something I've learned the hard way. When you catch a Karen red-handed and she still doubles down, it's not because she's brave. It's because she's delusional enough to believe the entire neighborhood will always back her. And when the HOA is basically her personal army, you can't just fight back with logic. You need finesse. You need proof. And most importantly, you need to hit her where she thinks she's invincible, her image. After the Tesla light show incident, Karen went into full damage control mode. But not the kind you'd expect from someone who's been caught stealing electricity. No, she didn't apologize, didn't offer to pay for the power, didn't even seem mildly embarrassed. Instead, she leaned into the crazy. She actually claimed that her car had been sabotaged by neighborhood radicals. Her words, not mine. The next morning, she marched around the cul-de-sac with a clipboard, warning everyone that there was a techno-anarchist in our community who was targeting electric vehicles. Apparently, I had graduated from homeowner to eco-terrorist overnight. Meanwhile, she filed an official complaint to the HOA board accusing me of endangering her property, interfering with her right to clean energy, and, my personal favorite, spiritually compromising the flow of communal goodwill. I didn't even know what that meant. I don't think she did either. The HOA, of course, responded like they always did when Karen cried wolf. They sent me a strongly worded letter threatening legal action if I tampered with community infrastructure again. No mention of the fact that she'd been literally plugging into my house like it was her own. No apology for the bogus fine they already slapped on me. Just another passive-aggressive reminder that in their eyes, Karen was always right. So I did what engineers do best. I gathered data. I installed a new smart power monitoring system. This one was more advanced. Real-time tracking, notification alerts, even power draw estimates down to the second. I set up a motion-triggered camera that fed directly to my phone and cloud server. Then I created a simple applet that pinged me every time the outlet was accessed. And what do you know? Despite the Tesla tantrum, Karen came back. Not immediately. She gave it a few days, maybe to test if the storm had passed. But on night 4, just after midnight, her car rolled into my driveway again. Slowly. Quietly. Like a raccoon looking for leftovers. She stepped out, looked around, then plugged in, exact same spot. I watched her live from my phone, sipping hot chocolate and laughing to myself. The outlet she plugged into wasn't rigged anymore. Not electrically, anyway. But the entire setup was now a trap. Because this time, the real weapon wasn't voltage. It was evidence. Over the next 10 days, she charged her car 9 more times. Same pattern. Late at night, always parked at an angle like she was trying to stay out of the camera frame. Didn't work. I had 3 angles now, and all of them had perfect resolution. One even caught her mid-yawn. So when the next HOA meeting rolled around, and Karen stood up with righteous indignation in her voice and called me a neighborhood threat, I stayed quiet. Let her rant. Let her foam at the mouth about how her car had never been the same since the spiritual attack. Let her wave around a printout from her Tesla diagnostics showing voltage surges and dashboard errors. I just sat back and waited for her to run out of steam. Then I asked for the floor. I pulled out a remote and clicked the projector on. Slide 1. Footage of Karen pulling into my driveway. Date and time stamp. Slide 2. A power usage chart showing the exact moment of connection, complete with a peak draw labeled Tesla charging spike. Slide 3. 9 more clip. One after another. Karen's face was visible in every single one. I added dramatic music because why not? Go big or go home. You could feel the oxygen leave the room. Karen's smile went rigid. The HOA president's mouth dropped slightly open. The treasurer coughed into his coffee and nearly choked. But I wasn't done. I passed around printed statements showing the total power draw from her charging sessions, over 74 kilowatt-hours. That's about the same energy it takes to run a small hot tub for a month. I included the dollar amount, $187.24, itemized. I had also included a statement from my home insurance indicating that unauthorized use of my utilities could void my coverage. Karen tried to interrupt, but I held up one finger. Just one. Because then came the kicker. I revealed the circuit schematic I had filed a provisional patent for. I called it the Tesla Theft Detection and Deterrent Device. Not only was it legally registered under my name, but it had also been reviewed by an online electrical safety forum as a clever but non-harmful deterrent for property protection. Karen tried to say I had created a weapon. I pointed out it was no more dangerous than a static shock from a doorknob and that she'd used my outlet nearly a dozen times without consent before the deterrent ever activated. Also, her car was never damaged, just confused. Tesla's own diagnostic report showed no lasting issues. The room was silent for a full 10 seconds. Then one of the board members, this older guy named Barry who mostly just came for the donuts, looked over and muttered, "Well, hell. That's just brilliant." Karen lost it. Full meltdown. She called me a sociopath, accused me of stalking her, and demanded I be removed from the neighborhood. Someone from the back said, "Lady, you've been robbing his house at night. Maybe don't talk about stalking." The room chuckled. Even the HOA president looked like he was trying not to smile. In the end, they voted. Karen was officially stripped of her vice president title. The board issued a formal apology for the fines they'd previously given me and removed them from my record. They also agreed to update the HOA charter to clearly define private utility outlets as homeowner property, not shared community resources. Finally. But the best part? The restitution. Karen was ordered to reimburse me for the stolen electricity. They gave her 30 days. If she refused, the HOA would fine her double and place a lien on her property. You could actually see her soul leave her body when they said the word lien. She stormed out of the meeting with her leopard print purse flapping behind her like a defeated flag. That should have been the end, right? You'd think that losing her title, being publicly humiliated, and getting slapped with a fine would be enough to make Karen rethink her life choices. But Karen wasn't done yet. Because just a week later, a mysterious complaint showed up in my mailbox. An anonymous letter accusing me of harboring illegal technology and creating instability in neighborhood energy fields. I almost laughed myself into a hernia. Then my security system caught her trying to sneak around my side yard in the middle of the night. Not with a car this time, but with a garden hose. And something told me she wasn't there to water the roses. There's a very specific sound a garden hose makes when it drags across gravel at 2 in the morning. It's not loud exactly, just wrong. It doesn't belong. And when you've already caught your neighbor siphoning power from your house and publicly melting down over her haunted Tesla, that sound becomes a red flag the size of a billboard. I was half asleep on the couch with a late-night rerun humming in the background when my outdoor motion alert pinged. I checked the camera feed, expecting maybe a stray cat. Nope. There she was. Karen. Tiptoeing across my side yard in fuzzy slippers and a windbreaker, dragging a hose like she was auditioning for a failed Ocean's 11 spin-off. I didn't even get angry at first. I just blinked, confused. What kind of logic led her to this moment? Was she trying to water something in my yard? Sabotage something? Hose down my outlet in some half-baked revenge attempt? Maybe she thought I'd short-circuit and electrocute myself. She crouched down by my irrigation box, the same one that, not long ago, I had used to send a little sewage surprise into her stolen water line, and started fiddling with something. That's when it clicked. She was trying to reverse sabotage me. Except, unlike me, she had no idea what she was doing. And she was about to find out. You see, after the Tesla incident and the HOA meeting, I upgraded everything. New lock. Hidden camera inside the irrigation box. Motion sensors embedded in the soil. I was expecting retaliation. You don't publicly dethrone the queen of HOA chaos and not expect her to try to claw her way back up. But even I didn't expect her to be so bold, so soon, and so hilariously incompetent. I watched her yank the hose around, try to connect it to my system, fail, and then attempt to twist a cap that wasn't even a real valve. That cap? It was decorative. The real components were sealed inside a weatherproof case under a false panel. But Karen, in all her late-night brilliance, believed she was accessing my water line again. I saw her grunt in frustration, stand up, and start smacking the box with the side of her flashlight. That's when I turned on the sprinkler system. You've never seen a middle-aged woman jump like that. The second the water kicked on, it blasted her straight in the face from a concealed rotating head she clearly didn't see. She shrieked, slipped on the wet gravel, landed flat on her back with the hose coiling around her like a defeated python. She scrambled up, drenched, hair sticking out like she'd licked a battery, and bolted back to her side of the yard without even looking back. I didn't even need to get up from the couch. It was perfect. The next morning, I got an official letter from the HOA requesting my presence at an emergency community conduct review. Translation: Karen had pulled the fire alarm. Again. I showed up to the clubhouse in jeans and a hoodie, half expecting another circus. And boy, did I get one. Karen was already there, dressed like she was testifying before Congress. Dramatic scarf. Oversized sunglasses. Tissue in hand. She claimed that she had been attacked by malicious sprinklers while conducting a routine community inspection. She accused me of rigging a deliberate water ambush and weaponizing landscaping tools. It was like watching someone try to sue gravity for making them fall. This time, the board was less sympathetic. The footage I provided showed her very clearly trespassing, tampering with my irrigation box, and attempting to access private property in the middle of the night. No flashlight or clipboard could reframe it as a community inspection. She looked like she was casing the joint. But Karen didn't give up. She brought in printed screenshots from some neighborhood Facebook group where people were gossiping about the Tesla meltdown. She claimed I was running a targeted harassment campaign, and that her car had developed electromagnetic anxiety from the incident. Yes, that was her actual term. Then she brought out the big guns. She presented a stack of papers that she said proved I was a threat to community safety. Tesla diagnostics, weird pseudoscientific articles about electromagnetic frequencies, and a petition she'd started titled, "Remove the Hacker from Oak Valley Estates." 4 signatures. Hers, her dog groomers, and 2 people who thought they were signing up for a composting workshop. I didn't even have to defend myself. The HOA board, burned by their last mistake, was already over it. The president leaned forward and asked if I had anything to add. I simply played the security footage of her being blasted by my sprinkler system. There was a beat of silence. Then someone in the back laughed. Couldn't help it. A snort turned into a chuckle, then into a full room of muffled amusement. Even Barry the donut guy said, "That's karma with a pressure nozzle." Karen was furious. She stood up, yelled something about bias and corruption, and stormed out. Again. The HOA issued an official censure this time, not to me, to her. They warned that any future trespassing or false reports would result in legal action. And that was that. I figured we were finally done. I'd won. I'd survived the HOA witch hunt, dethroned the suburban dictator, and turned my yard into a petty revenge fortress. But Karen wasn't wired like a normal human. Instead of laying low, she pivoted. She stopped attacking me directly and started working behind the scenes. Whisper campaigns, fake social media posts, passive-aggressive flyers posted at the community mailbox suggesting someone was using electrical trickery to control neighborhood behavior. She even went as far as calling the city to report my home as having non-permitted installations. Joke was on her. My permits were ironclad. Still, it was annoying. Death by 1,000 paper cut. Then one night, something new happened. I got a knock on my door. Not Karen. Not the HOA. A man in a suit. Real polite. Said he was with Tesla's Customer Integrity Department. Apparently, Karen had filed a formal complaint with them claiming my outlet had permanently damaged her vehicle. She said it gave her phantom glitches, that the soul of the car felt different, and that it had started playing music she didn't recognize. She wanted compensation. A new car. Possibly damages. They were required to investigate. I invited him in, gave him coffee, sat him down and walked him through the entire saga. Every video, every power log, even the schematic of the harmless surge relay. At the end of it, the guy shook his head and said, "We've dealt with a lot of things, but this is something else." He thanked me, said there'd be no further action from Tesla, and left. 3 days later, Karen's car was flagged for electrical inconsistency by Tesla itself. They marked her profile for restricted support. In simple terms, she was now a high-maintenance liability in their system. If she called again, her claims would go through extra scrutiny. She didn't know that yet, but she was about to, because the next weekend was the neighborhood block party. Everyone was there. Families, kids. The HOA, trying to seem normal again. Karen, of course, showed up with her Tesla front and center, like a prize dog at a show. That's when someone asked why her center console now flickered when she used Bluetooth. Her face froze. She muttered something about rogue frequencies. Another neighbor joked, "Maybe it's haunted again." Then someone pulled out their phone and said, "Hey, didn't this guy catch her stealing power?" They were talking about me. Karen turned slowly, saw me leaning against my fence, sipping sweet tea, smiling like I'd just seen the twist ending of a movie I already knew by heart. That's when she realized the tide had turned. Not just the board. Not just the evidence. The whole neighborhood was waking up. And Karen? Karen was running out of places to hide. There's a funny thing about people like Karen. They operate on the assumption that no one will ever push back. That they can lie, manipulate, cheat, and bully their way through life without consequences because everyone else is too polite or too busy to call them out. But once that illusion breaks, once the curtain is yanked back and people start seeing the person behind the performance, it doesn't take long for the whole facade to collapse. And Karen's was collapsing fast. After the block party, something shifted. The neighbors who used to smile and nod at her began avoiding eye contact. The HOA board started quietly pushing her out of committee meetings. Even her beloved Tesla, once the symbol of her smug suburban dominance, was now the subject of neighborhood gossip. Apparently, the flickering console hadn't stopped. The random Bluetooth malfunctions were getting worse. She'd tried to take it to a different Tesla service center, but the flag on her account followed her. Everywhere she went, she was met with that same polite but unmistakably patronizing response. "We'll look into it." Translation: "Lady, we know who you are." But Karen wasn't the type to go down gracefully. Oh no. If her reign was ending, she was going to make as much noise as possible on the way out. That's when the flyers started. Handwritten ones, taped to mailboxes and slipped into people's doors. They were mostly ranting nonsense about electrical sabotage and neighborhood conspiracies. One even suggested I was using electromagnetic pulses to manipulate HOA decisions. She spelled it electric. Another claimed I had built a mind control tower in my garage. I don't even have a tower. I have a Wi-Fi extender. Then she started trying to sell her house. It was subtle at first. A feeler post in a community group asking if anyone knew a good real estate agent. Then a for sale by owner sign appeared briefly in her yard before vanishing after a weekend. I figured she'd finally realized the neighborhood was turning against her. What I didn't expect was that her house wouldn't sell, not because of the market but because of me. Not directly, of course. I didn't post anything. I didn't say a word to any buyers. But somehow, and I really can't imagine how, footage of her charging her Tesla from my house had made its way onto the internet. A compilation, actually. Edited. Captioned. Scored with music. The title? Karen's Free Ride. How One Woman Stole Electricity and Blamed Demons. I still have no idea who posted it. Could have been anyone. The video blew up in the local Facebook mom groups, got reposted on Reddit, and even landed on some petty revenge YouTube channel with 500,000 views. By the time a real estate agent tried listing her house officially, the listing was getting bombarded with troll comments. One guy asked if the outlet was included in the sale. Another wanted to know if the car came pre-haunted. Zillow had to temporarily disable the comment section. At one point, Karen tried to shift the narrative. She started telling people she was moving for a career opportunity, and that the neighborhood had become toxic. No one bought it. Every open house she hosted had mysteriously low turnout. A few people came just to see the infamous yard. One even recognized the front porch from the freeze frame in the video. Karen stopped hosting them after that. Meanwhile, life on my side of the fence was thriving. My smart home project was nearly complete. Solar panels were finally installed and functioning beautifully. The best part? I had set up a password-protected outlet system tied into my smart grid. Anyone in the neighborhood could charge their devices or even plug in a car, if they asked. Politely. And had the password. I called it Power to the Polite. People loved it. Even the HOA admitted it was a forward-thinking community initiative. They asked if I'd consult on a plan to do the same across the neighborhood. Karen was not invited to that meeting. Now, you might be thinking that this is where it ends. That Karen packed up, slunk away in shame, and life went back to normal. But if you've followed this far, you know Karen doesn't do normal. Or shame. One last twist was still coming. The neighborhood had a big annual holiday decorating contest. Huge deal. Lights, inflatables, synchronized music. the works. Karen had won it 2 years in a row, mostly through intimidation and guilt-tripping the judges. But this year I decided to enter. Just for fun. I went minimalistic. White LEDs. Sleek patterns. Solar-powered, of course. A clean aesthetic with a subtle message. Then, in my front yard, I placed one final touch. A simple lawn sign backlit with soft light. It read, "This house is powered by the sun." Not the neighbors. People loved it. It became the unofficial slogan of the block. Kids took pictures with it. Neighbors shared it online. Someone made t-shirts. I didn't win the contest. But Karen didn't either. She came in fourth. Behind me, behind the guy with the inflatable Santa that did backflips, and behind a high school kid who just wrapped his whole house in tinfoil and wrote, "Budget Bling" in duct tape. That was the last straw. A week later, a moving truck showed up in front of Karen's house. No announcement. No goodbyes. She was gone by sunrise. Her Tesla was loaded onto a trailer. She didn't even drive it. I stood on my porch with my morning coffee, watching it all with quiet satisfaction. Not because she was leaving, but because she had finally run out of ways to twist the narrative. No more lies. No more flyers. No more haunted dashboards. A few weeks later, her house finally sold. The new owners were a retired couple from Colorado. Sweet folks. The husband's first question to me? "So is that outlet thing real?" I laughed, told him the whole story. He shook his head and said, "Well, that's one way to welcome us to the neighborhood." Then he added, "Mind if I get the password for your charging setup?" I smiled and handed him a little card with the code. Now, whenever I walk through the neighborhood, people wave. They ask for tech advice. One guy even called me the HOA whisperer. I'm not sure that's a compliment, but I'll take it. What started as a petty conflict over stolen electricity turned into something bigger. A shift in how the neighborhood functioned. A reminder that even in the most mundane settings, standing up to the bully matters. As for Karen? Last I heard, she was trying to sue Tesla for emotional damage. Something about her new car randomly switching radio stations. Personally, I hope it plays the same 3 songs over and over. Preferably something ironic. Like High Voltage by AC/DC. And me? I'm finally getting that peace and quiet I moved here for. No more fines. No more sabotage. Just the hum of solar panels, the occasional motion sensor ping, and the sweet, sweet knowledge that when someone tries to use my outlet without asking, well, let's just say I've still got the circuit. And it's ready to party.